Now let's get to the topic. The topic is the Dubai Data Protection Law, which is also called as the DIFC. DIFC stands for the Dubai International Financial Center, which is a financial services free zone in the Emirates of Dubai. So they had a law previously which was known as the DPL 2007, and now they have introduced with effect from today this law called as the DPL 2020. Let me move this to the image. Okay, yeah. So this law, as I mentioned, replaces DPL 2007, and like DPL 2007, this law will also regulate the collection, handling, disclosure, etc. of the personal data in the Dubai International Financial Center area. Why am I not able to move this slide? Oh, I need to use the mouse. Okay.
It is the arrow on the left hand side, bottom
Yeah,
left.
I think I need to use that. Okay.
Yeah,
I was trying to use the down arrow in the keyboard. It was not working.
This one.
Yeah. Okay. So this new DIFC law will predominantly apply to businesses with operations in the DIFC, that is the Dubai International Financial Center. And because of the impact of COVID, the government has given time up to October 1st, 2020. That's they have basically given 4 months extra for companies, to settle down and prepare themselves to start abiding by the new law. And as we go through the law, you'll realize that like when we talk of GDPR, when we talk of PDP, etc., you'll see that there would be some mention of the personal data, individuals' data, and or rather the citizens' data. Like in India, you would call it of Indian data, or in GDPR you might call it as European citizens' data, etc. That word will be missing in this Dubai Act, and that's mainly because the DPL 2020 aims to so rather further DIFC's desire to be recognized internationally as a top tier jurisdiction for data protection, because Dubai has always been sort of a business house, having or rather asking investors to come and invest in Dubai. So that's one small difference that you will see in the this data protection law that we will go through. Otherwise you would find that it's almost married with what we have seen in GDPR and what we have studied in PDP, and which is going to come into effect. End of the day, they'll all almost look together. I'm not going to do a deep dive into the act, but just to give you a sort of a flavor of how that act looks like, I just put up 2 slides basically to let you know how many articles are there and how they are divided into. I'm sure in the module G that we have, this is also one of the subjects I understand. So maybe we would dwell more deeper into it. So it has got, the part 1 is basically introduction and scope. It's got about 8 articles. Part 2 is general requirements. It's got about 14 articles. And that's divided into 4 subparts. And the names itself, I know since most of you are familiar with GDPR and PDPA, when we read the names, you would understand. And the crux is almost the same, legitimate lawful processing, special categories of personal data, consent and legitimate interest, and accountability. Now, I'll just maybe, I'm not able to move the mouse. Okay, yeah. So what is the special category of personal data? Basically, the data that talks of racial, ethnic origin, communal origin, political affiliations, criminal record, etc. So they have got certain special provisions for this kind of data. That is what is the falls under the special category of data. Then they have a chapter on, part 3 on joint controllers and processors, where 2 or more controllers are processing the same data. The joint liability stuff is there. Then part 4 is the most important one, the data export and sharing, how to transfer out data out of DIFC with adequate level of protection, without adequate level of protection, how to do data sharing. There are 3 articles on that. And they have 3 articles on information provision and 9 articles on rights of data subjects, which actually was only 2 articles in the earlier 2007 version. Then part 7 talks of the personal data breaches. It contains 2 articles. Basically, one is on notification to commissioner and second is on notification to the subject. And part 8 is what is the commissioner, and which we know in India as the DPA. So just to allude to that, unlike India, in Indian DPA, we would have a 7-member body. The Dubai regulator would only consist of 1 person, who is the commissioner and who is appointed in consultation with the DIFCA board. The contractual period is 5 years, and the upper age limit for that commissioner in Dubai is 75 years, as against 65 years in India. And as in India, the commissioner may establish certain codes of practices and certification schemes. So what we call as DPI in India is called as Commissioner in Dubai. That's all that we need to remember. And this is not a new term. This Commissioner term was already there in the 2007 period. Only thing is they have sort of enhanced their responsibilities and duties. Part 9 talks of remedies, liabilities, and sanction, and Part 10 is general exemption. So they have two schedules basically. Schedule 1 is rules of interpretation. Basically, all the defined terms are mentioned in Schedule 1. And Schedule 2 is a table of fines where they have, sort of listed the different kinds of fines for different kinds of offenses. So just a comparison, the earlier DPL 2007 had 8 parts as compared to the 10 parts here, and they had around 40 articles. Let me go to the next one. So what are the key changes? So we will just run through the key changes in the present act. So the first change is accountability, which is there in Article 14. And the controllers and processors under the accountability clause will have to be in a position to demonstrate compliance with DPL 2020. And this requires higher governance standards, including maintenance of a record of processing activity. So basically, whatever they're doing, how they're processing data, how the data is moving, all those things, anything which the word audit is not used. Okay, one more remarkable thing that I noticed while going through that is, I did not find the word audit anywhere, audit of this data, the word used. But if you see the way they have written the act, it tacitly means that, when you talk about accountability, obviously, without doing an audit, you can't, sort of fix up an accountability, or rather try to say if somebody has done something right or wrong. So that's one piece. The second piece is the DPO, or the data protection officer. And the data protection officer, again, is not mandatory for all companies, but the companies which are conducting high risk processing activities, they have to appoint a data protection officer. Also, companies that are adopting new or different technologies, I think this name will ring a bell with PDPA, and causing material risk to data subjects, they also need to appoint a DPO. Companies that are processing large amount of personal data, they also need to appoint a DPO. Companies that are involved in systematic and extensive automated processing, including profiling, they also need to appoint a DPO. And lastly, companies which are processing special categories of personal data, which I read out the definition earlier. Basically, if you see the definition, it would look like sensitive personal data. So any company which is processing sensitive personal data, they also need to have a DPO. The next is again a similar term which we recollect while going through PDPA, that is the DPIA, Data Protection Impact Assessment. So whenever controllers are undertaking any high risk processing activity, then they need to have DPIA done. And information notices, of course, all the privacy notices which are there, they need to be updated to include more and more information, such as lawful basis on which the personal data is processed, the fact that the data is intended to be transferred outside DIFC or not intended to be transferred, where it is going to process, etc., etc. Some more key changes. Breach notification. This is, of course, you'll see this in Article 41. And so there are two kinds of notifications they talk of. One is from the processor to the controller, and the ask is as soon as possible. The second one is from the controller to the commissioner. That is also ASAP, but then the word is as soon as practicable there. On the data subject side, we have part 6 of the whole act devoted to data subjects right. And when we do a comparison study, in fact, I've got some slides later on where I have done a comparison between DPL 2007, DPL 2020, and the GDPR, and you would find that the data subject rights now almost mirrors with what is there in GDPR. So they had some rights in the old Act 2007. Whatever was missing between that and the GDPR, they have sort of included it now, and that's a big chapter which is actually come up in the new Act. Processors, Article 24. So DPL 2020 also imposes direct compliance obligations on processors and also stipulates that the mandatory contractual requirements that apply to arrangements between controllers and processors is applicable. They have also talked about joint controllers. This was not there in the previous Act. So joint controllers are basically 2 or more controllers who process data jointly. And the ask is that they must enter into legally binding written agreements that clearly define each of their responsibilities. And later on the penalties portion also, they have defined as to how they will fix liability when data is being processed by joint controllers. Some other changes, sanctions. I hope all of you are able to hear me.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Sanctions. As in the case under DPL 2007, the commissioner has the ability to issue administrative fines to parties who violate the law or fail to comply with the direction issued by the commissioner. Both controllers and processors, maybe like I mentioned to you that Schedule 2 has got a detailed list of fines, but the broad perspective is that controllers and processors may be subjected to fines of up to $100K imposed by the commissioner and may be found liable by the DIFC courts to pay compensation directly to the data subjects, in addition to the fine from the commissioner. So this 100K is a fine that will be imposed by the commissioner, and in addition to that, if the DIFC courts order compensation to the data subjects, that will be over and above that. There is no limit prescribed there, basically because it would be the court's discretion to decide depending on the quantum of damage that has been caused to the data subject. The next thing is very interesting, that is the emerging technology and friction with data protection laws. So there is a single line mentioned there, Article 5B under purpose, where they have talked about this word. So there is a small expansion which I have made to that. So one area where the DPL 2020 takes a new approach is in recognizing that technology may develop in a way which creates tension with data protection principles and obligations and data subjects' rights. So now we all know that law is always behind technology, and possibly that's the reason that they have come up with this one line in the purpose. So now if we take an example, we can talk of a blockchain technology where there would be a creation of an irreversible record. And this would actually contradict the principles of storage limitation or not storing data beyond the time required, or etc. etc. So they have sort of, to avoid these kind of controversies, they have sort of put this as a purpose there, that this purpose of this law is also to take care of emerging technology and friction with data protection laws. How they are going to expand it or how they are going to interpret it, that we may have to sort of wait for the days to come. But I'm sure they would use the normal prudence when they sort of interpret and agree or disagree with claims with respect to this piece. Non-discrimination is another piece which you'll find in Article 39, and this is almost similar to the California Consumer Privacy Act, which does not allow data subjects to be discriminated against for exercising their rights. So if someone has exercised his or her rights, whether they are right or wrong, you don't discriminate against them. Now let's move to the comparison slides. Quick time check, Navi-sab. Are we okay? Yeah, okay.
You are going faster than required, perhaps.
We are going faster than required. Okay, so we will have more time to discuss. Okay, good, yeah. good. So I've sort of put these three in the sections: DPL 2007, 2020, and GDPR. So in DPL 2007, when we talked of applicability, they had just mentioned, it was an old act, of course, 13 years back, when privacy was still in its nascent stage, or people were not talking much about it. So they mentioned that it's only for any business registered in DIFC, nothing more was there. And now if you look at DPL 2020, in fact, they have talked of any business which is registered in DIFC, any business which processes personal data within DIFC as part of stable arrangements, and any business which processes data on behalf of either of the above. I will just go through what is a short gist of what is there in that Article 6. Article 6 basically says that the DIFC law applies to processing of personal data by controllers or processors incorporated in the DIFC. So first thing is they should be incorporated in the DIFC, regardless of whether the processing takes place in DIFC or not. So if they are incorporated in DIFC, but they are processing their data elsewhere, even outside DIFC could mean inside Dubai, outside DIFC, or it could mean outside Dubai also, anywhere. Then the law is applicable. The second piece is it says controllers or processors that process personal data in DIFC, regardless of their place of incorporation. So if there is a company in India, but it is having data processed in DIFC, so that comes to the second point in that slide that I'm showing, any business which processes personal data within DIFC as part of stable arrangements. So maybe that we have a company in India which is sending data to Dubai. That company does not have an establishment in Dubai, but it has contracted with another company which is established in DIFC, and that company is processing the data. So then this law would apply to both, to that company which is processing and also to the company which is sending the data there. So this is the point that we need to sort of keep in mind, that while they have not used the word extraterritorial jurisdiction or something, it clearly means that they will have an extraterritorial jurisdiction so long as the data is so long as the data is either processed in DIFC or the company is registered in DIFC. The second one is, next point is part 2A, data protection principles. Now, if you look at the data protection principles which are there, the DPL 2007 had a fair amount of data protection principles, processing fairly, processing lawfully, processing securely, purpose limitation, data minimization, storage limitation. So they possibly have carried out a comparison, because in the end, when we come to the summary, we will realize at some stage that the whole aim is trying to get adequacy status, which is what other countries are also trying to do. So they realized that the accountability piece was missing, the transparent processing of data in transparent manner was missing, and the requirement to process personal data in accordance with the application of data subjects rights was missing. So they just added those three pieces and sort of made it comprehensive. So whatever was there in DPL 2007 is there, and over and above that, they have added this accountability, transparency, and processing in consonance with the data subjects rights here. And that sort of marries it with the GDPR. The next is conditions for consent. So conditions for consent, it was not specified in 2007. In 2020, they have added that consent has to be must be freely given, and it can be withdrawn at any time. And then if you look at GDPR on the right side, it is almost on the same lines that we have there. If anyone wants to add anything more on the GDPR, please feel free to stop me. Like I said, I'm not a specialist on GDPR, but if somebody has anything more, please feel free to stop me. Accountability. Accountability is something which I sort of read a few slides earlier. So where they have, we will just go through that once again. Controllers and processors must demonstrate compliance with the data protection principles. And one of the areas of emphasis in the new version of law is the accountability of the data controller. The controller needs to establish data protection by design and default. Navisab, this is from your notes, in fact, and copyright to you. The controller needs to establish data protection by design and default, taking into account the risk assessment and establishing a compliance program. So basically, they're talking of data protection by design and also establishing a robust compliance program. And the law repeatedly emphasizes proportionality in the respect of data collection to the purpose of collection. So basically, what they're trying to say is, you collect only that much amount of data which you require to process. The next is on the data protection officer. So there are about 4 articles there, Article 16 to 19. They have gone into depth on the data protection officer. This was not there again in DPL 2007. They have added it in 2020. And the new DIFC law requires that controllers or processors to appoint a DPO if they carry out high-risk processing activities. I think I mentioned this to you earlier when we were talking about the DPO a few slides earlier. And let me see. Let me just look at what I have not mentioned. Then maybe I'll. The DPOs are mandatory for the DIFC bodies, but they are not mandatory for courts which are acting in their judicial capacity. And as I mentioned earlier, any controller or processor performing high-risk activities, they need to appoint a DPO. Data processors. Again, in DPL 2007, there was no obligation on the processors. The DPL 2020 imposes legal obligations on processors as well as controllers, and any breach of their obligations will result in fine or judicial remedy for the data subjects. DPL 2020 also talks of controllers and processors to enter into binding written agreement, which is akin to what is there in the GDPR. So they're talking that you must have a binding written agreement and it must contain prescribed terms. And without those binding agreement, the processor should not appoint sub-processors. Cross-border transfers. This is an interesting piece in most of the privacy agreements, and of course they have tried to make it same in DPL 2020 also. So there are 3 articles basically, Article 26 to 28. So the new DIFC law also contains similar international data transfer restrictions to the akin to the GDPR, and it will apply to in respect of all transfers of personal data outside the DIFC, including to the UAE. Under the new law, the organizations will no longer have the option to apply to the commissioner for permission to make cross-border transfers. And such transfers will only be permitted where there is adequate level of protection in place to protect the personal data. So the first point that we need to note is transfers will be permitted only if there is adequate level of protection in the place where the data is being transferred to protect the personal data. The second point which is important is that organizations will have to map their data flows to understand where the personal data is being transferred, whether inside or outside their corporate group, and ensure that adequate safeguards are put, and where necessary, they must sign up to standard contractual clauses. So for cross-border transfers, just to sum up, there are two pieces that are very important. One is adequacy in the level of protection, and the second is, the flow has to be mapped, and where necessary, that is in case it is going outside the corporate group, then necessary contractual clauses have to be signed. Rights of individuals, articles 32 to 40. So here also, if you see on the left side, DPL 2007 had certain rights, and whatever was missing between that and GDPR actually has got added to DPL 2020. So right to access is there now in DPL 2020, right to withdraw consent at any time is there, right to data portability is there. Right to object to automated decision making, including profiling, has been added. And of course, the most important piece of non-discrimination, which I said that the right of a data subject to not be discriminated if they exercise any of the rights set out under this part. So basically what they're saying is the controllers should not deny the data subject any goods or service or charge different price or not sort of offer them the applicable discounts or provide them a less favorable level or quality of goods just because they exercise any of their rights. Next, let's move to breach notifications. This is covered in Article 41 and 42. In DPL 2007, there was no requirement of breach notification. And as I mentioned earlier, they are talking of only two kinds of breach notification. One is notification to the commissioner under 41, which is as soon as practicable, where the breach comprises of data subject's confidentiality, security, or privacy. And to the data subject, what they're saying is that when the breach is likely to result in a high risk to the security or rights of the data subject. Of course, these things are not elaborated in detail here, but I'm sure we would the expansion or explanation for high risk to security or rights of the data subject would be akin to what we would do in normal parlance when we are interpreting it in GDPR or PDPA. Penalties. I think that's the last piece in the comparison chart. So the DPL 2007 talked of a maximum fine of 25,000, and here, as I mentioned earlier, the maximum fine is about 100K. Of course, they have also, as I mentioned earlier, courts can award, over and above this 100K, specific penalties to be paid to the data subject in case the data subjects have been harmed. And compensation claims can be made by or on behalf of the data subjects. And detailed listing of the claims, it's about 2 or 3 pages, is there in Schedule 2. In fact, they have sort of listed out each and every kind of breach that could take place and different kinds of penalties for that. So how to get ready? So basically raise awareness across the organization, audit all data flows, update privacy notices, access all the contracts and check whether they are compliant, review procedures that support data subjects' rights because the data subjects' rights have now increased, and sort of establish data breach procedure and see if you need to appoint a data protection officer, and sort not the director data protection officer, and if that be so, that needs to be done. I think I am done with it, and let me stop sharing, and if you have any questions, let us take on our way.
Yeah, Prakash, Samir here. I have a question. Is there anything on related to healthcare data specifically in those that list you are saying? Anything on healthcare?
They haven't used the word healthcare, but like I mentioned to you, that sensitive personal data, that definition which was there, that talked of racial. 1 minute, let me just go to that slide. See, it talked of health or sex life, genetic data, and biometric data. So they fall into special categories of personal data.
No, no, I'm talking of personal medical data. Has it been mentioned anywhere?
So when you talk of anything about the health of the person, that would transcribe into medical data is what is my understanding.
No, no, that's all right. But there's no special mention anywhere.
No, they haven't. See, they haven't mentioned. See, what they have done, they have given this, like we have sensitive personal data, they are calling it a special category of personal data,
Okay.
where they have listed all the stuff that we have in India. So health is also one of the parameters there. Sex life is one of the parameters, and genetic data is one of the parameters. All these three, if you interpret it in the right spirit, they would all fall into your medical data.
Okay.
In some form or the other. That is what is my understanding. Yes, we have experts here. We can maybe take up.
Why I'm asking you is Dubai is becoming a very big center for medical tourism.
Yeah. So it would be there. So my view is they will cover them within these three parameters. So health is a broad word actually.
Yeah.
It is not for whole Dubai. It is only DIFC. Basically, the purpose is to attract investment and companies to DIFC, and by showing them that we have got Data Protection Act in DIFC, so companies can come and establish their base in DIFC. So it is not applicable to whole Dubai, only that particular area called DIFC.
DIFC, that's right.
The word health is there, Prakash. In the special categories of data, they have somewhere inserted the word health also, because I say health and sex life. So obviously that will not be left out.
Yeah, so that is what I said, that in the definition, once the word is there, and then they are talking everywhere about special categories of personal data, which means it includes all these pieces which are there in the definition.
Yeah.
Prakash, would you be able to share the official whatever notification or copy of the law?
Yeah, I have that. In fact, I can share the whatever slides I've made. No issues. I can share I have got both DIFC 2007 and 2020. I can share that, and also the notes that I made to talk today. No issues.
Not in Arabic. Not in Arabic. They are in
English. Not in Arabic. They are all in English only.
Yeah.
Mr. Prakash.
Yeah.
Hi, Prakash. This is Meenal. I wanted to ask you. You said that when you were explaining the applicability of the act, you mentioned that the corporation has to be registered with the DIFC, and then you also made a statement that it is extraterritorially applicable. So, is it applicable to an Indian company which is processing the data of a UAE resident or a citizen?
If you are processing it in DIFC, it is applicable.
But if you're not, if you're processing it in India, then?
No, then you're not. So that is what I mentioned. If you recollect in the beginning, I said, the GDPR and the Indian law, there is somewhere this word Indian citizen. That word is missing in the Dubai. It's missing. So they are only talking of what happens in DIFC. So if you are a company registered in DIFC, irrespective of whether you're processing in DIFC or outside of DIFC, it is applicable. If you are a company which is registered outside DIFC but processing in DIFC, again it is applicable.
Yeah, but if you're an Indian company but processing the data of a UAE citizen or a resident, then it is not applicable.
Yeah, if you're doing it in India or if you're doing it in USSA or USSR or USA, it's not applicable.
That's a big difference.
That's a big difference. Yeah. So they are not talking of citizen. That's basically like as Dr. Rakesh also mentioned, and Samir also mentioned, they are more concerned about their image as a business destination. Destination.
Yeah.
Mr. Prakash.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, Mr. Prakash.
Yeah.
See, what is the definition of the DIFC? Is, for example, as I know, the UAE consists of 7 emirates. So one emirate which I visited is Al Quwain. If a business is registered in Al Quwain, so that this law does not apply to that particular business in the Al Quwain.
It will not apply. Inside Dubai, they have got this, something like an SEZ. That's what I understand. That is called as Dubai. Yes, I said it is called as Dubai International Financial Center. It's a small place where, of course, companies have established. They have given them tax soaps and all that for establishing it there. So this law is applicable only inside that particular area.
So,
it is just like SEEPS in India.
Yeah, like SEEPS you can say. Yeah, that's right.
Sir, if a business is in Sharjah, so that
it is not
applicable. Not applicable.
Then it's not like a national law.
If the business is registered in Sharjah and they are processing in DIFC, then it is applicable. If the business is registered in DIFC and they are processing in Sharjah, then it is applicable. So there has to be some connection with DIFC, otherwise it is not applicable. For a Dubai company or a UAE company registered outside DIFC and processing even UAE citizens, that it is not applicable.
So this is a
Right.
very limited purpose. And
No,
one more
see,
question.
you're right, limited purpose. But then if you see, it is more of a business propaganda to market DIFC, and also to ensure that foreign companies also sort of come and work out of DIFC, because if they want to be compliant with the other laws, they can say that they are working in an area where they have adequacy of laws. So that's it.
Okay, this law will apply to the government agencies in the UAE.
If it is registered in DIFC.
If it is registered in DIFC, correct.
No,
That's the bottom line.
sir, what I'm talking about is, see, UAE governments, they have various government departments, health department, whatever it is, a business department. So this not apply. In our India, it is very specific.
No, it does not
Applies to-
apply.
Then
See, in the law, they have not given any, they have not mentioned anywhere, that this law is not applicable for government processing or something. They have clearly said if it is processed inside DIFC or outside DIFC. That is the yardstick that they have used basically.
Is there any national level legislation apart from the financial region in Dubai?
No, I think then in that case, this law is not a national law. It is not a country law. It is only a particular business unit law. That is
It's
my
a business
understanding.
law. That's
Yeah,
right.
that's what I'm asking. Is apart from this, is there any national level law that they are having in Dubai?
In fact, Dubai is not a nation. Dubai is an emirate. A nation is.
Yeah, it's an emirate. It's an emirate. I'm asking,
So
apart from the
it is not
region,
even
is there any
emirate
other?
law.
Is there any other legislation that they are having?
No.
On personal
Among the
law,
7 emirates, is there
privacy,
any
no.
other legislation covering all the 7 emirate nations?
They don't have a separate privacy legislation. They do have
Kingdoms.
other laws, but not on privacy like this. A detailed law on privacy is only this one, which was there in 2007, which has now been modified.
So in the 7 kingdoms, there is no other privacy legislation?
It possibly the others might sort of pick up from here and try to bring, because like right now it's only DIFC which will possibly get the adequacy status from GDPR.
Right.
So the other emirate countries also will try to do the same thing. That's what is my understanding.
Okay.
Prakash, Suresh here. Thank you. Thanks a lot for a nice session on the this thing. Yeah. But one critical this thing, what I noticed when Meenal asked the question. So actually, what they mention is that when DIFC, the law is applicable when the processing occurs, when the means or personnel used to conduct the processing activity are physically located within DIFC. So even if you have a PC or a computer or a server located there, and it's actually, you're routing the data through that, probably it's going to be applicable. And also if any personnel is actually sitting in that particular DIFC, the location or the area, I think it would become applicable. So that's
Right.
an interesting thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So they are not talking of that your processing should have been completed, right? As you rightly mentioned, if part processing is happening there also, that means data has been processed there.
Yeah. And Prakash, we work with a hospital called the NMC, the New Medical Center in Abu Dhabi. Ritesh, there is in Abu Dhabi, and that's owned by Dr. Shetty only, if you know Dr. B.R. Shetty, BRS, right? And so we work very closely with that hospital. There are about 23 hospitals in UAE and some in Europe and some in India also. And he was telling me that they have very strict privacy laws. And as a hospital, they are following very strict norms. I'm sure that is not covered in the DIFC. I'm sure Abu Dhabi and other places have some other laws.
Quite possible, but it is specific for DIFC. It may be possible that the other law may be there. Basically, there is no parliament which passes law. It is a decree by that specific emirate.
By the ruler.
By the ruler of that emirate.
वो तो फरमान निकलता है उनके
फरमान ही निकलता है वो. फरमान is by the Dubai emirate.
Ritesh is trying to say something, I think, but we are not able to hear him.
And your Shetty was in the news recently for wrong reasons.
Wrong reasons, yes, I know. That's why I didn't want to take his name, but वो मुंह से निकल गया.
कोई बात नहीं.
He is saying it in encrypted language, so we are not able to hear it.
Yeah, he is following the privacy law to the maximum.
He has got Chinese mobile, so it is already following Chinese.
I thought you were going to say that.
He is speaking in Chinese, so we are not able to understand Chinese.
Okay, so my question is, now which all large organizations are there in DIF?
almost whoever so is present in terms of multinationals have registered themselves in DIFC because they get some kind of tax benefits there. So you might take 4 rooms there just to have an office, registered office inside DIFC, and then operations could be anywhere. So it
means that this law is not like, we can't say like this is like really a limited act. I think it's quite applicable if there are so many companies over there, and especially if all the large corporations are over there, right?
Yes.
Oh,
they're registered there because of, like I said, tax benefits.
Okay, thank you.
But it will
Almost,
only be
almost.
that,
Ritesh,
not
sorry, Ritesh. Not only the like Samir mentioned business houses. In fact, if I remember correctly, there are quite a lot of educational institutions also which operate out of that area.
Or SP Jain and
Manipal, they all have operated
all registered there. Yes. Minal, you were saying something.
But no, I'm saying that suppose a company is registered in DIFC but is operating through a sub which is not registered, then it is not going to be applicable to the sub, right?
No, they have to work through the main agency only, because then only they'll get benefits.
No, I agree, but I'm just saying then the Dubai privacy law will not be applicable to the group entities, only the entity that is registered in DIFC.
Correct.
And Prakash, I want to ask you, I don't know if you did mention, are there provisions around minors data in the Dubai protection law?
I don't recollect having seen
because
that.
Because it was not there in the presentation. From what I can.
Yeah,
remember.
no, I don't recollect it being there. But if there is something, then I will go go through that and let you know when I send the slides. Yeah, it's not there. I didn't see the word that the normal discussion that we have on the child, age of child, etc.
Yeah.
That piece was not there basically because like I mentioned earlier, they're talking more of processing of. Business data. In fact, all the personal data is mentioned there, but then as a business, so they don't. I don't know. Maybe if I missed it out somewhere, I'll let you know.
Yeah. Okay.
No, Prakash, I don't think you have missed it because I didn't actually. I just checked and there is no mention of the word child there. Yeah. So the regulation. Yeah. And also one crucial thing I think they have missed out is the records of processing activity as per GDPR Article 30, right? The data flow maps, the requirement of data flow maps, and all of those things. I don't think it's been mentioned explicitly, right?
Yeah, so that if you remember, I was mentioning, they have talked of accountability, but they have not talked of how that accountability is going to be audited or what steps they will follow. So they've left it broadly. So I'm sure either they will come up with
guidelines,
certain guidelines subsequently, or they would follow the normal process. Like if you want to check whether, or rather you want to see whether somebody has done a job rightly or wrongly, you would follow. What would you do? You will follow particular guidelines, or you will follow the relevant ISO and sort of check. Maybe they would use that. And then obviously the companies would also start maintaining in that pattern the way they go in for the first audit.
Maybe they have done this act in hurry, just taken something from GDPR, something from somewhere else, and just put it so that companies are attracted to DIFC. Maybe quite possible.
Yeah, and the last line says, basically all the notes that you see in the internet, it all finally says, it's alluding to get adequacy status from GDPR. So obviously, as you rightly mentioned, the aim is first put the act out, and then maybe slowly iron out the creases.
But it is not the first act. They have already come in 2007. They have amended it now. So there is a lot which they have seen. They would have felt that what should be done, and that should be added to that. But anyhow,
correct.
They
have managed to do that. I think almost close to 80 to 90. See, what they have done is, GDPR minus 2007 is equal to DPL 2020. They have sort of added and put it like that. But maybe they must have, this accountability audit and all is a long drawn, you have to write a lot of stuff there to put it correctly. So they must have said, we will leave it for amendment to DPL 2020.
Apart from GDPR, the other best act is PDPA, which is designed by Sri Krishna. A lot of deliberation has gone. So they should have taken some thing from PDPA. It would be much better. Anyhow, that is their outlook.
Choice. Yeah.
But I think, they have tried to marry that CCPA, the requirement of the data subject, the do not sell my data or some of those things along with the GDPR. So essentially, I think, they are trying to attract American businesses as well, right?
Yeah, Kodanraman, you have got something?
Yeah, I wanted to add some information.
Yeah.
When we look into the international privacy laws as on today available, In US, they are not much worried about privacy. But in European, I do not know from the beginning, from last 15, 20 years, when you look in, they are moving towards privacy as a wealth that they should preserve. I do not know the reason behind it, right? So there is a trend, a psychological trend in the European nation, and they started this privacy as a propaganda or as a requirement, essential requirement. So their interest was to protect the privacy of the citizens. In US, they were not. They were inclined towards more of a commercialization. But here, this Dubai, I think it's a amalgamation or hybridization. They are not worried about the privacy of their citizens. They are more worried about attracting others to their business place. I think that's the intention here. It's only a kind of a gimmick where they want to attract people, saying that, yeah, we are complying with GDPR, we are complying with other international laws of privacy, and here whatever you do is also protected. That is the message they are trying to give. When I go through the basics, I could get it. That's my opinion. I wanted to share with you. Thank you.
Yeah, just quickly from my experience from another course, what I learned was that Europeans, they trust their governments. And also based on their bitter experiences with the World War I and II and all that, they trust their governments, and the scenario is kind of opposite in the US. So that is something that I wanted to bring up. And I want to have a question for Mr. Prakash. The 2007 Act, it was also specific to DIFC?
Yeah, that's right. It was also for DIFC only.
Okay.
Yeah.
So on the lighter side, just about European GDPR, I don't know, we all know Swiss banks. So maybe that's the reason, they're more worried about personal data not going out.
Prakash, there's a question on the chat box from Deepak about the qualification criteria for the DPO.
Okay, let me just put out that.
I think it is provided in Article 17.
Yeah, it is there.
17.1 you can see.
Yeah, it is there in 17. Just a minute, I'll pull it out.
Yeah. It only says should have the knowledge of this law and it's also the other laws. I think it makes a mention of laws of this particular 2020, the DPL, and also other laws. I think that is one of the criteria which I remember I have seen.
That's right.
Yeah.
Laws, local laws or other laws?
Other law means you're talking of GDPR, you're talking of PDPR, whatever is that. So
other laws may be local laws also, because the person
other local laws also. Say other local.
So sort of a lawyer. Then should it be a lawyer?
Yes,
they have not mentioned. They have said.
They have not mentioned that.
Knowledge of law means lawyer, right? I mean, otherwise everyone knows law. हमारी तो देश में सबको law पता है.
No. Knowledge of technology is also required. But the emphasis on knowledge of not only this particular legislation we are reading out, but also other data protection laws has been mentioned as one of the requirements. Other than that, there is no specific.
Yeah, they haven't said that, and not only that, they have also said that the DPO must generally reside in the UAE unless the DPO is employed within the organization's group and performs similar function for the group on international basis.
And it also
qualification of the controller? Any
qualification
for controller?
Qualification of the controller. 1 minute. Let me pull out that because I was not looking at that.
That is also important because that will decide how the.
For the DPO, they make a mention that the management has to provide sufficient resources to the DPO to perform his duties. And he should have direct access to the senior management. So these are some of the specific points which indicate that the DPO has to be a fairly senior person who will be able to supervise about the activities of the regulation.
Navi sir, it's almost a one-on-one on that Article 37 of the GDPR. So
yeah, as somebody pointed out, the idea is to get adequacy from in the GDPR context, perhaps. So that's why they have tried to do as much as possible.
So do they say that the DPO has to be on the rolls of the company, or it can be an external consultant?
It can be an external.
It can be external. Yeah, They haven't mentioned that. See, only where the person is working in the same company and performing group functions, then he can be located elsewhere. Otherwise, they are saying he has to be in Dubai, but there is no mandatory ask that he has to be an employee of the company. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is only in Dubai, not DIFC.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Dubai. So because DIFC में शायद मकान नहीं है, only offices are there.
But somebody resides in Abu Dhabi, then that is not allowed. Only Dubai.
Dubai.
Navi sir.
Yeah.
So during the day today, I was hearing a webinar by a person from IAPP. He said that many of the laws what we are talking, including the GDPR, it is not a privacy law. It is only a data protection law. So how to distinguish between these two terms of data protection law and the privacy law?
No, correct. What you are saying is correct. That's why what I have been saying is, we are trying to protect privacy through data protection. The basic objective is privacy protection. Okay, so Indian PDPA actually talks about the objective is to protect the privacy. Now, since protection of privacy requires an option to be given to the data subject or the data principal about how his personal data has to be managed, and that personal data is going to be in digital form, this Data Protection Act comes. So, behind this data protection, the objective is not to protect the company like in the information security scenario. Information security is having the objective of protecting the company from any losses which arise out of the failure of security for the information. But data protection laws talk about harm to the individual. So basically it is a privacy protection law, but in the context of the protection being afforded through protection of the choice about the way the personal data has to be processed. Basically, ultimately, it boils down to taking the consent and asking the person how his data has to be processed. Indian law goes one step further and calls this controller a fiduciary. Therefore, it makes him a little more responsible, even if the data subject or the principal does not know what instructions to give to the data controller. The data controller in Indian context, who is the data fiduciary, has to take the role of a trustee and take the decision which is best in the interest of the data principal. So that is very specifically mentioned in the Indian law, and that's why we fold the Indian law slightly in a higher esteem, because it has, by calling the person data fiduciary, they have removed the shackles of this consent. So if the consent is weak, if the person does not understand what is he giving with the information, that is informed consent is not correct, in all those cases, by telling the controller, you are a fiduciary, you have to do what is best for the data principal. And that is to protect his privacy. So Indian law is a data privacy protection law. And even the GDPR, I think we should look at it like that only, because the objective is to protect the privacy, which is there in the very early articles of GDPR as one of the objectives.
You have to understand this from an analogy. So, for example, if you are going to stay in a hotel where there is a glass and a curtain is there. So, if there is no curtain, then your data privacy and data security are open. So, I mean, if there is only a glass, then anybody from outside can see you. So your privacy is violated. So to order to protect your privacy, you need to have both the glass and the curtain. So data security is one of the principles to protect privacy.
Very well explained.
Privacy is much more than the data privacy. Privacy is a broader term, and data protection is one part of the privacy. As Mr. Pranav said, that somebody is seeing physically, there is no data in that. But somebody is seen physically behind the glass. Somebody is taking bath. So that is also violation of privacy, but there is no violation of data privacy. So privacy is much more than the data, and data is one part of the privacy.
Dr. Rakesh, this is the first lesson that Navi sir gave us in the session.
Yes.
वो पुरानी ये बातें याद आ गई.
बिल्कुल याद आ गई, सही बोला आपने.
See, there is another point of view, Anand Patnam here, that why they don't call as a privacy law or something like that is that privacy, they say it's agreed that is a mindset, and it has got a lot of background of the cultural or a lot of other regional backgrounds are there, so they cannot make one law which suits everyone. So it's a mindset of the individual as well. So they don't want to call it as a privacy law. They would like to call it as data protection, as Navisas always says that the data protection, the end objective is to achieve the privacy of the individual through the data protection. So that's another point.
Yeah, Pratyush has got one question.
No, also the data protection is essentially a European word, while privacy is normally a US word. I mean, you need use information privacy or data privacy in US and data protection in Europe. That also
fine, Pranav. Now,
Navi, I would like to add on something on fundamental rights, if you follow me. That will be relevant here. See, in Indian context, we are worried to bring privacy as in the forefront. It's a fundamental right. In fact, this is only a practical regime through, it need not be a digital privacy information. Even digital is also covered under the Indian law. It need not be digitalized. Even non-digital in the traditional pen and paper is also covered under Indian privacy law. Kindly, we should note that. Secondly, this is only giving a practical regime to the fundamental rights. Like RTI is a practical regime for the fundamental right. Here, to bring a practical regime, this has come. So even now, if there is a violation in the privacy, the Indian citizen can approach under Article 32 and 226 as the case may be. That remains open. But to bring that into the practicality, this consent and all has been brought in as a practical regime. Here, the forefront is the privacy. More important is the citizen's privacy as a fundamental right. It may be digital or non-digital. So therefore, there is a different approach. As far as Dubai is there, they are interested only in their commercial earnings, having this establishments commercially running there, because they are worried in the days to come, their fuels may not be purchased and they may lack unless this kind of provision is provided to the people there. So they want to make it as a business hub center. But here in India, it's the extension of the fundamental rights into a practical regime. That's my understanding. Kindly enlighten.
Okay. Prakash, you have got anything? Otherwise, Pratyush has got one question. You can take that question. He wants to know whether there has to be a distinction between data privacy program or a data privacy project. Between the two terms, should we make any distinction?
So program is long term, that is my understanding, and project is specific to a particular requirement.
You can apply it as a privacy by design and DPIA perhaps.
Correct.
DPIA will be project based. Privacy by design is fundamentally the program of the organization. Then
as for Navi, as for project management concepts, project has to have a specific start and a specific end.
Yeah.
And it has to come out with a product at the end. And like you are designing a product, that's a project, maybe 1 month or 1 year. In a program is an ongoing process. AMC is a program, it's an ongoing process.
Yeah.
And program can have many projects in between.
Yeah. Thank you. Then somebody, I think Mahendra Limaya has asked, has there been any known cases?
I read that. So there's nothing significant. In fact, I did try to Google and see if there are anything big. Basically, because that law also did not have much of teeth, or like you could make a lot of errors under that and get away, considering the law in the present regime. So there are not much of cases. There could have been small causes court cases, because they do have a small causes court established inside DIFC, but those are not reported, I think, and I have not been able to figure out anything there.
Pranav, you have got some personal experience in the Dubai market?
I just took a training in the month of March, CIPM training.
So Rakesh has been handling some clients, I think, there. Rakesh Goel.
Long back, not now. But after 2011, there is no client there.
Okay. So Indian professionals have missed the opportunity in Dubai. Now this opportunity is coming up. I'm sure a number of Indian companies have opened offices there. Without checking, perhaps I can make just a statement like that. So, which means that all of them will now be, they will have to find out to what extent this law applies and whether they need a DPO, whether they should have restructuring of their processes in such a manner that they can be out of the contention. But some exercise of DPIA is essential for every company and they have to document it. So I think there is a wholesale work which people like Rakesh can do. You have to move to Dubai and...
So Rakesh, let's plan a visit to Dubai.
We can do. I'll not move to Dubai. I'm happy
Let's plan a study tour to Dubai.
I feel there is going to be a lot of opportunities.
Yes.
And same way, there are companies in Europe who have opened shop there. Just for the marketing advantage they would have done. And now all of them will have to look at how to be compliant.
Actually, Dubai is basically a marketing or a sales hub or a logistics hub. It is basically serving to whole GCC area and Iran and all those things, because a lot of sanctions are there in Iran, and the goods goes to Iran via Dubai and all the GCC countries. But after this pandemic, lot of things are changing. The Dubai market is crashing, and there are a lot of unpaid checks, etc. A lot of things are happening in Dubai which is not conducive to do business there. But anyhow, still I don't know what will happen there. But Dubai is a very tricky market as of today.